Julian, is this in fact rock bottom, and how could it be bottom if there are 8 games to go?
Unfortunately, I think it is, Nick. You think about the changes that they've made to the offense, and really the only true change was handing the play calling over to Thomas Brown. It's been worse. They've had 2 offensive touchdowns in the last 12 quarters since he's taken over as a play caller. Bryce Young, who seemed to have turned the corner in that win against Houston with the walk-off field goal, has regressed over the last 2 weeks, getting outplayed by an undrafted free agent, Tyson Bagent, on Thursday Night Football in Chicago. Like, I don't see how this can't be rock bottom. We've sat here, we've watched Kyle Allen consistently turn the football over, and people convinced themselves that he was the franchise. We were sold Sam Darnold here in Carolina as being someone who could be fixed, that he could change his ways in Carolina and be the answer. The Panthers went out there and hired Ben McAdoo as the rock star OC, and we saw how that worked out. So I can't see how Frank Reich, with Thomas Brown, this all-star study coaching staff that we were led to believe, and the way that their offense has gone out and performed, I can't see how this is not rock bottom for the 1-8 Carolina Panthers with really no wins in sight moving forward.
All right, full disclosure for anybody watching on YouTube, it's 3:20 in the afternoon on Friday. Julian, the Panthers have not fired anybody, made any staff changes. Are you surprised by that, especially after the start, the game on Thursday night, and the fact that we saw David Tepper in the box next to Scott Fitterer shaking his head?
Well, give it a couple of hours, I feel like, on this Friday, that we're recording this for maybe it to happen. I'm not necessarily surprised. I feel like maybe they have a little bit of time. To me, it feels fairly inevitable that there will be a change, whether it's the entirety of the coaching staff being removed, whether it's Scott Fitterer, the general manager, being removed as well, or just both of them. So I'm not surprised right now. If Bryce Young's development continues to go into the direction that it's going, where he's regressed over the last couple of weeks, I don't see the argument for retaining Frank Reich and this offensive coaching staff, considering the primary reason you brought them in was to place them with a young rookie quarterback and to be able to have the rookie quarterback in a situation where he could thrive, he could grow, he could develop. And right now that's not happening. So I'm not necessarily surprised nothing's happened right now, but I do expect at some point in time, if this is how it's going to go, that David Tepper, the owner, will have to make yet another change here in Carolina.
We'll talk more about Bryce in a moment, for a few moments, but let's stick with the coaching staff. Frank Reich was asked Friday afternoon whether he would actually take play calling duties back from Thomas Brown after a few weeks, and he did not say no. He said it goes into the evaluation, and he's going to do whatever it takes to make this football team better. What do you think of that answer? What would you think of Frank Reich reclaiming play calling duties after just a few weeks?
I feel like Thomas Brown is fortunate, honestly, that Frank Reich was the one who was calling plays in the first place, even if the plan all along was for Thomas Brown to take over the play calls. Now, we've talked about this. I'm skeptical of whether if they would have been 5-1 or 6-0, if they actually would have changed it over to him. I doubt that would have been the case. But even though the plan was always for him to be the play caller, had he been the play caller the first 6 weeks of the season and they were 0-6, and then looking at how things are right now, he would likely be the one that would be the scapegoat and out of a job here in Carolina as the OC. I don't see any changes really. Like, if Wright goes back and calls the plays, the offense has looked worse over the last couple of weeks in a period of games where you thought that it was winnable for the Panthers. Even the one game that they won, they only have 244 yards in that game, and 86 of them came in that final drive where they had the walk-off field goal. So 158 up until that point. So it hasn't been good to Thomas Brown. If Wright takes over, I don't really know if that's going to change anything. They still have the same issues. They can't block. The receivers can't get open. And right now, Bryce Young does not look very confident. And he honestly has not looked great, considering he's the number 1 overall pick. So I don't really have many thoughts on them changing back to Frank Reich, other than it's just going to be the same bad offense. So, yeah, good luck with that. And maybe Thomas Brown becomes a scapegoat then. I don't know. Would they expect to change? And that's just really delaying the inevitable that all these guys will likely be out of town here, considering how things have gone.
Julian, I think about half of David Tepper's head coaching firings between his 2 teams, and we have that large of a sample size now to say half, have been mid-season. But everybody's gotten at least a season. Well, Ron Rivera, it was his first season under Tepper, got 12 games. But do you think there could be a change at head coach for the Panthers mid-season in Frank Reich's first season?
No, I don't see that happening. Now, David Tepper, as we know, is not a very patient man. You bring up the firings. Ron Rivera was fired at 4 weeks left in the season in 2019. We saw Miguel Angel Ramirez, the manager for Charlotte FC, was fired after 14 games. Christian Latanzio just got fired following his first full-time season as the manager for Charlotte FC. We saw Matt Rule get fired after the first 5 games of the season. And then I guess Steve Wilkes effectively get fired after the season as well. I think that they'll probably wait. And now David Tepper, top when he fired Ron Rivera, he wanted to get ahead of the market to be able to have time to look at things. Did the same thing with Matt Rule, and we've seen that's really not yielded much success. Being the first team in the market looking for a new head coach, maybe they allow Frank Reich and the coaching staff to take this deep into December to see how things are going to go. If they fire him early, again, I just don't see what benefit that's going to do to anybody. You're going to make who's going to be the interim head coach? I'd imagine maybe Jero Rivera. Is he going to realistically get an opportunity to be the head coach if he takes over? And even if he were to take over, someone on the staff were to take over, going into the Week 11 matchup against Dallas next Sunday, this football team's not going to win games. I don't see the turnaround that they had last year with Steve Wilkes forthcoming. Now, we didn't see that turnaround last year coming either, but this year it just feels worse. So it could happen. I just don't really feel like that's going to yield the kind of turnaround that we saw last year, but you never know.
All right, now that Scott Fitter is removed from Matt Rule, and we don't know who made the final push for Bryce Young or whatever, but you look at all the other moves, Miles Sanders, Hayden Hurst, some of the offensive line, DJ Johnson on defense, part of a group that got absolutely no pressure Thursday night. Is Scott Fitter's time coming to a quick end here in Carolina?
He would seem to be the one who's next on the chopping block. And if there was going to be a move made during this mini bye, as Panthers are now off the rest of the weekend, and of course they'll be come back next week in preparation for Dallas, that would be, I suppose, the logical move. I don't want to sound like a Scott Fitter defender, but let's be honest. Bryce Young is who David Tepper wanted, and David Tepper did not allow this general manager, front office staff, and this coaching staff to trade up to number 1 overall and not draft the quarterback that he wanted. I believe that, yes, Scott Fitter, that David Tepper, that Frank Reich, and all of them wanted Bryce Young. But David Tepper, if he wanted CJ Stroud, they're going to draft CJ Stroud. They were not going to let him. He's not going to let this organization move up there and not get the quarterback that he wanted. So I don't really know how you place that on Scott Fitter. You look at a guy like Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders has a relationship dating back to Philadelphia with Deuce Staley, the assistant head coach. I look at that more as that Deuce Staley wanted him around. You look at some of the other decisions, like DJ Johnson. Jero Rivera reportedly was one who was very high on him. Now, Scott Fitter had to trade up to go get him, but it sounded like the defensive coaching staff wanted him around. So you look at a lot of the players on this roster. I look offensively, especially. I feel like this coaching staff that's here currently played a large role in identifying some of these players. But of course, Scott Fitter comes from a scouting background, and we've seen how the draft classes have had far more misses than hits since he's taken over. And whether it was Matt Rule, who was very influential in wanting to bring some of these guys in, Scott Fitter's scouting background and looking at the draft, that's probably where you look at Scott Fitter and have the most concern as far as how things have gone. So I don't think all of this isn't on Scott. But just looking at a scapegoat, he's probably the next in line. Whether that's right or wrong and changes anything, we'll see.
All right, we've talked about coaching staff, front office, maybe changes. Quarterback's not changing for a while. And I think it's too soon to write the book on Bryce Young just yet. But you got to think that the first 6 games, despite all the pressure, despite the lack of separation, he seemed poised, he seemed controlled, and he seemed to kind of have that moxie about him that he came here with. Last 2 games, we haven't seen that. What do you think fixes, what's like the lesser of 2 evils, letting him play through that or letting him sit and watch Andy Dalton do it?
We got to let him play through it. I think that's part of the evaluation of his coaching staff. If they were able to get Bryce moving in the right direction, then there's a conversation to be had about, okay, maybe they can come back next year. You add some more pieces on the offensive line, add some pieces on the outside, and you can move forward with this coaching staff. So that's why I think Bryce Young needs to continue to play, just so you can evaluate whether this is the right staff in place. If you don't play him, then, well, maybe you're just kind of throwing in the towel and deciding that this coaching staff isn't the right coaching staff in place here in Carolina, considering that the first year of Bryce Young would be an unmitigated disaster, aside from, of course, knock on wood, him having a season-ending injury and not even being able to participate the rest of the year and during the offseason program once we get to that portion of the NFL calendar. But I don't think they should sit him. They got to keep playing him. and they need to hope that Bryce looks like the guy we saw at Alabama. But I think Bryce right now is a guy who's shell-shocked, who absolutely needs some help from the offensive line that gave up 3 sacks to a team that only had 10 going to that game on Thursday night. He needs somebody other than Adam Thielen to step up. The unfortunate thing about all of that is, when looking at the current construction of the roster, I don't know how those things are going to all of a sudden change and help Bryce moving forward the rest of the season. So we'll see what they decide to do. But Bryce Young, considering all they gave up and that David Tepper wanted him, he's going to be out there on the field. He needs to be out there on the field.
Yeah, not a lot of help around him. A lot of pressure coming at him. No turnovers against Chicago. And he started to move the football a little bit better there in the second half in the fourth quarter. But, I mean, do you see more red flags than you see flashes of brilliance right now with the number 1 overall pick?
Yeah, and here's the thing, too. I don't want to sit here, and I don't think this is on Bryce. I think the organization has failed him with the pieces around him on offense, just the way the scheme has been developed here with the offensive coaching staff. I think that every turn so far they have failed Bryce Young. But all that being said, it's not like Bryce is infallible. He hasn't looked good. And yes, the coaching staff, what's around him, the scheme, all of that, of course, is a reason for why he has not looked good. But even still, you would expect it a little bit more from the number 1 overall pick than what we've gotten so far this season. Like, Tyson Bagent wasn't great at all for Chicago last night, but he looked better than Bryce. He looked a little more poised than Bryce. Yeah, of course, he had more time to throw the football. I understand all of that. He has DJ Moore, which Bryce could absolutely use, but he looked to be just a better player last night. I don't think he's a better player, but he looked better in that game. And that's concerning that Bryce, while everything around him is not great, really hasn't looked like that lone bright spot that he did back in the preseason. Because in the preseason, we saw the breakdowns and the receivers not really making a ton of plays, but you could still see that glimmer of hope with Bryce Young. Right now, through 9 games, 8 starts for him in 10 weeks of the season, I really haven't seen that glimmer that we saw back in August when you could see there was something with Bryce Young. Not to say there's not, but right now it's been a little disappointing that we have not seen more out of Bryce Young, despite all that's failed around him.
Julian Council, if Thursday night was rock bottom, I look forward to our chat Sunday next week after the Cowboys and their fans are here to face the 1-8 Carolina Panthers. We'll see you then.
Oh, boy. Yep. Can't wait.